Hello guys, welcome to Medycoding.com. So in this lecture, we are going to study the anatomy of the skin. We all know skin is the outer covering of the body. So we will study the layers of the skin, its function, and some disease of skin. We will give limited information that will be sufficient for the medical coder. So let's start. Skin is the largest organ in the body. It is around 10 to 16% of the total body weight. So, what are the major functions of the skin? The first important function is the protection. Skin protects us from outside environment, like infection, UV light, also from injury up to some extent. It also helps in the vitamin D synthesis, okay? Next is temperature regulation. So if we feel so hot, then the body will release the sweat to decrease the temperature. Also, we feel the sensation because skin is also a sensory organs. So the skin are divided into 3 layers. The outermost layer, that is epidermis. Epi means outside. The second layer is dermis, that is below the epidermis. So the both layers, epidermis and dermis, is known as cutaneous. Okay, so the layer that is below the dermis, that is hypodermis. Here, hypo means lower. So other name of this layer is subcutaneous, means below the cutaneous. So this term is mostly used by the physician in surgery or writing the report. Okay, so we will discuss these layers in detail. So the first layer of skin is epidermis. So that is the superficial layer and this is the outer layer. This is made up of a special type of the tissue that is keratinized, stratified, squamous, epithelial. We will discuss why the name is given in this way. Okay, so this layer is avascular. Means in epidermis layer, there is no blood vessels. The thickness of epidermis vary based on the location like palm and the sole. Since palm and sole are prone to the injury, so these area has 5 layers, but the other region has only 4 layers. So the thickness of skin varies from location to location. So you can see here, this structure of epithelial cell is known as squamous, okay? So if these squamous is flat, scale-like structure. So you can see the layer of fish scale. This structure is squamous. Now, if this arranged in layer by layer, that is known as stratified. So this is stratified squamous epithelial. Since it contains the keratin, that way this layer is called as keratinized stratified squamous epithelial. The outer layer of the skin is made up of dead cell that act as waterproof. It is because of keratin. So keratin born in the deeper layer of the skin, then it moves upward. Then mature keratin formed and as reaching to outer surface, it gets dye and makes skin harder. That is known as cornification. So the skin outer part, as you are touching, that is the hard part, okay? That outer layer is the hardened layer. So that is because of the high amount of keratin protein. So this process of making the keratin and dyeing and become hard, that is known as cornification. So now we will discuss the layer of the epidermis. So what are the layers of the epidermis? There are 5 layers of the epidermis. The first layer is stratum corneum. So this is the dead layer, okay? This layer acts like a barrier because it contains the highest amount of keratin. The second layer is stratum lucidum. So this is only found in the thick skin, We know the thick skin that is prone to the injury, like palm and the sole. So this additional layer provides the extra support for this location. The next layer is stratum granulosum. Here, keratin combine with the lipid, and this lipid helps to make skin as waterproof. The next layer is stratum spinosum. So in this layer, the keratin formation starts. We know that the keratin starts forming on the deeper layer. So as it's going above, upper layer, it becomes mature. So in this layer, Langerhans cells is found that act as an immune system. So our skin also protects us from the infection. So this is because of this cell. The last cell is the last layer, is the deepest layer, is stratum basal. So in this layer, melanocyte is found. So melanocyte is responsible for the secretion of melamine that gives the color. The next is the Merkel cell. So because of Merkel cell, we feel the touch or sensation. We know that the skin contains epithelial cell. So there are other cells too. Let's see in next slide. So the keratinocyte is the cell that makes keratin. That is a tough protein. The next is melanocyte. We have heard the term melanoma. So melanoma means the cancer in melanocyte. So this cell makes melanin, so the pigment that gives us color. If the person has more melanin, means he has darker color. Okay? So this melanocyte also protects us from the UV ray. That's why the black people have more tolerance to harmful UV rays. Next, Langerhans cell that gives us immunity. Then last one is Merkel cell. We have read that it helps to feel the touch sensations. So now we'll discuss about some diseases of the epidermis. Okay, the first is like the psoriasis. Psoriasis is caused because of the disorder of the keratinization. We know that the keratinization is a process of forming the mature keratin. So if the keratinization process is high, means they're forming too much keratin quickly, then the skin becomes thicker and it leads to a scalp and the thick patch on the skin. You can see in this image, so this condition is known as psoriasis. Okay. The next is vitiligo. That is caused due to the loss of melanocyte. So melanocyte secretes the pigment that is melanin. So if the disorder of melanin occurs, then these white patches created on the skin. So now you can see in this figure. So this condition is known as vitiligo. Next is the infection. That is, the most common infection is warts. So warts are the benign growth on the skin, okay, caused by HPV virus. That is known as human papilloma virus infection. Okay, so warts, we have some code for surgery. Okay, you'll see this in CPT code. The next is impetigo. That is also a skin infection, but that is caused by bacteria. Next, tinea. So tinea is caused by the fungus infection. So these are the images of warts, impetigo, and this is tinea. Now in next slide, we'll discuss about the tumor of the skin. That is very popular because for the tumor, the physician perform excision. And excision is the common procedure in the integumentary system. Now we will discuss about the tumor of the epidermis. Okay, so the first is the basal cell carcinoma. So the basal cell is found in the stratum basale layer of the skin. So due to the UV light, either from the sunlight or from the other source, the division of the cell is disturbed. So it divides more rapidly. So the cancer is formed. So that is known as basal cell carcinoma. The next is the squamous cell carcinoma. So we know that the keratin starts forming on the stratum spinosum. So in this layer, the cancer that is found, that is squamous cell carcinoma. Next is melanoma. This is very, very important because it has aggressive nature. It grows rapidly. So it's formed from the melanocyte. Okay, the cell of melanocyte is getting disturbed. So the melanoma will occur. So these all are the cancer of the skin epidermis. We can see these tumors are having cutaneous origin. So don't forget this term because in CPT guideline you will find this. The second layer of the skin, that is the dermis. We know that the epidermis and dermis, the term given cutaneous. So the dermis layer contains collagen and the elastin. So the collagen is responsible for the strength and the elastin is responsible for the flexibility. If the person has less collagen, the skin will be loose. Okay, we have seen wrinkle in our skin for the old age. It is because of the lack of the collagen production. This layer also contains the blood vessels. This is a very important point because the epidermis doesn't contain the blood vessels. This layer also contains the hair follicle, the gland that is the sebaceous gland. We know that the sebaceous gland that secretes the oil. Okay, so if you feel oily on the skin, that is because of the sebaceous gland. The cyst formed in sebaceous gland known as sebaceous cyst. Hair follicle also found in this layer. So the dermis layer is divided into two parts. The first is papillary, second is reticular. So the papillary consists of 20% and the reticular consists of 80%. The papillary layer contains the capillary that help in the nourishment of the epidermis. Also, it also contains the Meissner corpuscles for the light sensations. So the next, reticular dermis layer. It contains the collagen fiber, elastin fiber. It also contains the hair follicle, sebaceous gland, sweat gland. Also, the sensory function is that it contains Pacinian corpuscles that feel the pressure and the vibration. Now let's discuss the important disease of dermis, okay, that is hemangioma. So we know that the dermis layer contains the blood vessels. So it is a benign tumor of the blood vessels. So hem means blood, angio means vessels, and oma means tumor. Okay, so hemangioma is a benign tumor of the blood vessels and it affects the dermis layer. So if you memorize the root word, then it will be easy to identify the meaning of medical term. So visit Medycoding.com and download root words. Hypodermis. This is the last layer of the skin. This is also known as subcutaneous. Cutaneous, we know that epidermis and dermis both are used as a term cutaneous. So below the cutaneous, that is known as subcutaneous. So this layer mainly composed of adipose tissue. That's a fat, okay? This fat store energy and the depth is different for different persons because the amount of this tissue will be different. It's also provide insulation. This is the reason the fat peoples will feel less cold because of this tissue. The next is it act as a shock absorber. So, this is the end of this lecture of skin from Integumentary System. And we tried to give you the least and more valuable information. Okay, so it will be helpful in the medical coding. We can go in a deeper, but this is not required. If you want, you can go by yourself. So, again, thank you and please give share to your friends.